Welcome to the 100th episode of Jom Sembang Malaysia. Crazy us. You're listening to
Jom Sembang Malaysia.
Well, crazy us to have reached 100 episode.
Yes.
I think for two introverts who think that talking is not something that we stand up for, the first thing. But I think that's what helps. Intro actually have a lot to talk about because we are deep thinkers lah, or at least I'm talking for myself lah. So I think to start with this 100 episode, I would like to just review back on what we have done so far. So maybe we'll start with just sharing about two things each about the podcast. Whether it's a like or dislike is also fine lah.
Okay.
Yeah. So as usual, Juwita is just looking up somewhere above my head. So
Juwita is an introvert, so she needs time to think before she speaks.
So for me, I think I started off the podcast because I wanted to talk about topics that I think I want to discuss with the younger generation.
Okay.
I think that was the main purpose when we first started lah. But as we go along, I think what I really treated the podcast as a place where I can talk about things that my friends think that I'm too deep
Okay.
or too intense to talk with.
Yeah. Okay.
So that has been a very interesting point because I find that a lot of my friends, they are not very good with intense talk one-to-one. Or in person.
Okay.
Like we don't sit down here and like, hi, let's talk about friendship breakup today. Like what? Or like we don't explore things even though it might have been inspired by their life. So for example, they might be complaining something about their mother and then we have a very interesting conversation about it, right?
Yeah.
But it's always still quite surface because it's always talking about what happened. But I'm the person who like to analyze or observe what's the motivation that have led there, right? So a lot of the podcast topics that we have chatted over the last 99 episode was inspired by chats that I had with my friend at a surface level that I wanted to bring deeper, but they are not ready to bring deeper lah.
Oh, okay.
So and then for me, what really benefited is after it's being released, after they have listened to my point of view, they come back to me and say, okay, I'm ready for the deep conversation.
Oh, so it actually sparks a follow-up conversation.
Correct.
After the podcast.
Correct. So for me, that is a big takeaway. Being a podcaster lah on this podcast series. So yeah, it's quite interesting. So it's almost like it kind of inspired them to say, hey, Gina has a view or certain things to talk about this topic. Or I wanted to talk about this topic with someone, but there's no one. Oh, but there's Gina. Because I don't always sit down and open with a deep chat. So not everyone knows that I have things to contribute. Or they just wait for me to write. Because I'm a writer. So yeah, that has been my biggest takeaway so far.
Mine. I'm not sure if it's a takeaway, but it's something that I appreciate.
Okay.
So, right, I take time to think. So there are some things that I like to germinate on, I like to brew on. And sometimes after talking about this for 15, 20 minutes, right?
she post-process.
Yeah, I'm going away. Still, well, we record quite fast and then we move on to the next thing. But because I'm also editing it, so when I'm editing it, it plays in my mind again. And then I start to process and try and understand things better. So for example, one of the things that we talked about recently was quiet quitting. So if you remember on the episode, I really didn't get it right. And I'm not ashamed to say I didn't get it because I think half the population out there also don't get it lah. But after that, it triggers a lot of things to think about personally for me. So I'm thinking, actually, is it a bad thing? Is it a good thing? Actually, it's a good thing, what? Because, but I'm the type that I treasure these inquiries, even if it's in my own head.
Correct. So you have to understand how our podcast work. I don't know how other people run their podcast, but how Gina runs the podcast is I will come up with some topics. Yeah. It's not even scripted. Our podcasts are not scripted. Yeah. Number one. Number two, we just come up with the topics. And Juwita's job is to go in the studio, pick a topic and we talk about it. Okay. Yes. So she doesn't even have time to sit or brew about it 3-4 days before entering the studio. So that's why sometimes I'm the one talking a lot because she's busy thinking, sitting opposite me.
Got lah. Sometimes the night before lah, I think.
Yeah. But we also keep it very real and fluid because we wanted to just see where it goes.
Yeah.
without having a script. So really it's just pointers. But sometimes the pointers does not work, so I have to give description. Because she asked me, what? Doom scrolling? What's this? You
Yeah,
know?
because it's something that I don't even do, and we do have quite a lot of years between us, you know. So
Yes.
So yeah, even then there's like a little generation gap, like little one, quarter of
But
a
does it
generation.
also helps you to have better conversation with your friends? Because now you have more well-thought things to talk about.
Honestly, I don't really talk with my friends about these things.
Wow, that makes some of my friends and your friends.
Yeah, except for, I don't know, like the Gen Z episode. After that, we were like having like a whole 3 weeks. And not you lah, with my other friends just talking about other Gen Z stuff, which was quite funny. Off and on, yes. But I think a lot of it is really things that for me to think about and germinate.
So maybe this episode we don't have to do a break lah. Special episode 100 episode.
Today's episode was recorded at Studio 2105. Now, if you're looking to record a podcast like us, or if you're recording a demo, a song, an album, look up 2105 Productions or contact JD. They are on Twitter, they are on Facebook, they are on Instagram.
So the other thing that I really benefited from the podcast is having guests.
Yes!
Because I find that our guests, okay, so you must know lah, people guests also got topic and then what they need to, sometimes they ask us, so what is the topic, what's the question? Again, like just now, right, we don't run our podcast based on tight framework. So normally they come, I say, you can talk about, for example, there's a topic given because they're chosen for a certain topic reason.
Yeah.
For example, the family got problem, that's why we got family dynamics or something like that, you know. And then they come over and then we talk, and then because it's all as it goes, so we find that a lot of the gems or insights that come out can also be exactly like what Juwita said. You're talking to them halfway there, suddenly they tung tung, oh yeah, I said that one.
Yeah.
So the thinking process is kind of happening as it's recorded.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
So for me, I learned a lot from our guests because of that. That means I'm not structuring the podcast. Like, oh, you got to answer like this, then it's like this, then it's like this. That's why we have this episode. Now I'm going in the same way as they are going in. What's going to happen? Don't know. Let's just chat. So because of that very non-guided rule, I learned a lot from our guests. Either about themselves or the kind of knowledge that they have lah.
Yeah. And considering some of them are actually our friends who we've kind of known for quite a long time. But
And you realize, right, you don't, like you said just now, right?
Yeah.
We don't sit down with your friends and say, come, let's talk about some serious topic lah.
Yeah.
First dating topic, you know, like you're like, I've never okay lah, I sat down with my niece before lah.
But that's
we
your
talk
niece
about
lah.
like how you know this guy, that kind of thing. But she have also revealed a lot of things on our podcast that she have not spoken to other people or told family members. In fact, she said that, oh, my mom hear this die, you know, that kind of thing. So there are things that I find that when people come into the studio to record at Studio 2105,
yes.
okay, they also realize that are very chillax and vulnerable because that's how the setting is.
Yeah.
And therefore the information that we're getting or the sharing we're getting are very raw and pure.
I think it's also the objective of it. Like you said, right? We want to share our stories because perhaps there are people out there who are going through what we might have gone through 5 years ago or last week.
Correct.
And to feel not so alone, or perhaps, you know, different insights on things. And that gives us that passport to be a bit more vulnerable, even though you know that people you might be having a problem with are listening. If they listen, oh, you know, they go like, oh, you're talking about me.
Yeah, but then we also give our guests the anonymous card, so.
That's true. No, I'm talking about ourselves.
But I think that's the key point, being vulnerable as a content creator lah, especially a podcast, right? If you are not vulnerable, you cannot do a very good podcast. Because we cannot be sharing things that I can Google and find out.
Yeah.
So in order to you to share things that you Google, you cannot find out, is being vulnerable about what you actually feel or experience firsthand lah. You know?
Yeah.
And then opening up there and say, if you want to judge me lah.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter whether you've actually found a solution for it or it's still an ongoing struggle.
Correct.
It's just, I think it's just being authentic lah. I think the other thing I enjoy about this podcast is I've done a fair share of radio interviews
Okay.
prior to this. And as much as I appreciate, what the radio does because it's got a massive reach and all that, I find that it's very hard to go deep into a certain topic. I think they're very
They
rare.
talk 4 minutes and say, okay, now let's go to the ad.
Yes.
Then go deep. And then after they come back, where were I?
Correct. So, there's very rare, maybe 2 occasions where I felt like I could really share something that was of any worth on a radio interview, unless it was a talk show kind of thing lah. But if it's like just a radio or TV interview for that matter, this one I felt like, 20 minutes of talking about one topic really gives you the leeway to share a story or two. And for me, it's that sharing those stories that make a difference lah. It's like really going deep lah, I think, or to unpack it a little bit more, or like when you're talking and then I'm like, just brewing off of that and like learning something on the go, even as we're doing this. So while people think like, we're listening to this podcast so we can, I don't know, why do people listen to podcasts?
I just listen because I'm curious about other people's life. So if there's a podcast that I listen and it's not vulnerable, this is 5 ways to do this. Chances of me listening is no, not there. I will listen to podcasts that tells me, I spend how much in a week on what? Then I know, God, such human exists.
Right.
So I listen to podcasts to know what kind of people are out there. Therefore, for me, vulnerable podcasts is very important.
Okay. So I listen to podcasts. I realize those that I listen to are those that expand my, I just said, right, I'm very high on this knowledge inquisitivity thing.
Yeah.
So when it's like, I never thought about this that way before. I never knew about this. So it's just sharing of stories that, I can gain from and I can grow from. Maybe not directly. How does this, trivia piece of information actually help you? Maybe
Correct.
Not much, but it's like, it triggers some other things lah. So being able to, I think, share those stories has been a nice thing lah for me.
For me, the other thing is like taking a break from the real world.
Oh yeah.
Even though this is also real world, right? So what happens is when we come for podcast recording, we have to turn off our phone, airplane mode, and then people cannot contact you. And then you're forced to focus on what the other person is talking about. Unless you melayang, and then you have Gina going, hey, come back, like we don't know where we're going, that kind of things. Which has not really happened. Or even if it happened, we kind of left it on the show. Most of our show are 99% there. We don't really slice out anything, right?
Yeah.
So for me, coming here is like taking a break from the real world to actually think, reflect, and just like this. Sometimes we get so busy in life that we don't have time to sit down and allow our own brain to go deep.
It's like getting in touch with yourself almost.
So I don't know, do you all listen to podcasts because of that? Because that's the only reason I would say I look forward to come recording is because it's like taking a break.
That's true.
It's like really like, okay, no matter how busy, how messed up everything is out there, this half an hour that we're recording is like, break, So since looking at this is the 100th episode and these 2 introverts probably have run out of things to talk about already.
For some time.
We were thinking of taking a break and coming back with a new approach to things maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So we look forward to actually listening to what feedback or suggestions that you might have.
Yeah, and Spotify or wherever you're listening to actually has a comments feature. So whether you're listening on YouTube, Spotify, where else? Anchor. You can drop us comments and feedback, and we'd love to hear what you want to hear. Or maybe
so
see
whether it's
next time.
topic suggestions or even the format, because we're looking at changing the format as well. To be a little bit more, in line with what we do lah.
Mm-hmm.
The whole sharing, having all the time in the world to share what you want to share. That should be how it is lah. So thank you once again for joining us for 100 episodes.
Yeah, thank
you
you
must
for
give
listening.
yourself a clap.
Woo!
Because we can make 100 episodes, but must got people listen lah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing it too.
So yes, let us know your feedback, and if all is well, we might see you in the, we call it 3rd season, 2nd season, I don't know.
Second lah. Oh, shout out to JD, Studio 2105 for letting us record in his beautiful studio. Thank you, JD.
Yeah, man. Can you imagine the first few episodes we record from home with the microphone falling down?
Yes.
You're welcome!
So with that, guys, stay in touch. And yeah, if you miss us, do just drop us a text either on Juwita Suwito's social media or my social media.
Gina Yoong.
Yeah, and then we just hope to continue to keep this community going. So we're just taking a break for the next few months to just rethink a little bit more what kind of new elements that we can bring to you.
Jom Sembang Malaysia is hosted by two Malaysians who are passionate about Malaysian stuff. Today's episode is recorded at Studio 2105.
Remember to click like and subscribe for the brand new episode next week.